In the heart of West Africa, nestled between rolling hills and lush green forests, lay a small village named Anya. Anya was a place of great beauty, with its bright clay houses, winding dirt paths, and vibrant marketplace filled with the hum of community life. The air smelled of fresh earth and sweet fruit, and the songs of birds and the sounds of children playing filled the air. It was a village like many others, humble and full of promise, but it was also a village on the brink of transformation, a village about to embark on a journey that would change its future forever. Anya had always been a tight-knit community. The people knew each other's names, families, and stories, and they worked side by side to grow their crops, raise livestock, and keep the village running. It was a life rooted in tradition, where the old ways of doing things were passed down from generation to generation, and everyone played their part in maintaining the delicate balance between nature and survival. Yet, like many villages in Africa, Anya was facing challenges that threatened its future: economic hardship, limited access to education, and the steady encroachment of modernization. In the center of Anya, under the shade of a large baobab tree, a group of villagers gathered each evening to discuss the state of their community. Among them was a young man named Kwesi, only 25 years old but already known for his sharp mind and unshakable resolve. He was the son of the village's leading farmer, known for his deep connection to the land and his ability to cultivate crops in even the harshest conditions. But despite the land's promise, the people of Anya were struggling. The weather patterns had changed, with droughts becoming more frequent and unpredictable, and crop yields were suffering. Young people were leaving the village in search of work in the cities, and the elders feared that the community was slowly fading into obscurity. Kwesi, however, refused to accept this fate. He had grown up with a deep love for his village and its people. From a young age, he had seen the power of unity and hard work. His father, who had taught him everything he knew about farming, always said that the strength of the land was matched only by the strength of the people who tended it. But even as Kwesi worked the land with his father, he knew that something had to change. He could not stand by and watch as his people fell further into poverty and despair. He had a vision of a future where Anya was not just surviving but thriving. Kwesi's dream was to bring prosperity back to Anya by creating a sustainable cooperative that could harness the power of the land, foster economic growth, and provide opportunities for the youth who had been leaving in droves. But he knew that this would not be an easy task. The people of Anya were deeply rooted in their traditions, and change was often met with resistance. The elders, who had lived their entire lives in the same way, were skeptical of new ideas, especially those that threatened the status quo. But Kwesi was undeterred. He had spent years studying sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, and community-led development. He had seen the possibilities in other villages and towns, where cooperative movements had brought together people to work toward common goals and create shared prosperity. If those communities could do it, why couldn't Anya? Kwesi shared his vision with his closest friends, a small group of young people who had grown up with him in Anya. There was Amina, a brilliant young woman with a deep understanding of business and finance, Kofi, a talented engineer with a passion for renewable energy, and Adama, a natural leader who had always cared deeply for the environment and sustainability. Together, they formed the core group that would help bring Kwesi's dream to life. The first step was simple but difficult: they had to convince the elders of the village to trust them. The elders, who had seen many young people come and go with big ideas, were not easily swayed. But Kwesi's passion, combined with the support of his friends, was contagious. They met with the village council, presenting their ideas for a cooperative that would focus on sustainable farming, renewable energy, and small-scale industry. They argued that this approach could help Anya not only survive the changing climate but thrive in it. They promised that this would be a model for the future, one that would preserve Anya's traditions while adapting to the needs of a modern world. The elders listened, their faces stoic and unreadable, but at the end of the meeting, they agreed to give the young people a chance. It was a momentous decision, one that would change the course of Anya's future. But the journey had only just begun, and the road ahead would be full of obstacles, setbacks, and difficult decisions. The first major challenge Kwesi and his team faced was securing the resources needed to kickstart the cooperative. They didn't have much money, and most of the villagers lived hand to mouth, making it difficult to raise funds for such a large undertaking. But Kwesi and his team were resourceful. They pooled their savings, reached out to NGOs and development organizations for support, and slowly began to piece together the resources they needed. Their first project was a small pilot program focused on sustainable farming. They selected a few acres of land on the outskirts of the village and began experimenting with organic farming techniques, using crop rotation and natural fertilizers to improve soil health. They also began planting drought-resistant crops that could withstand the increasingly erratic weather patterns. As they worked, they invited the villagers to come and learn. They hosted workshops, explained the principles behind their methods, and encouraged others to try new techniques on their own land. The response was mixed. Some were skeptical, while others were curious. The success of the first harvest, however, spoke for itself. The crops flourished, and the yields were far higher than anyone had expected. This success sparked interest among the villagers, and slowly but surely, more and more families joined the cooperative. Kwesi and his team knew that farming alone would not be enough to create lasting prosperity for the village. They also needed to create jobs, build infrastructure, and provide access to education and healthcare. Amina, with her background in business, began developing plans for small-scale industries that could provide employment and generate income. Kofi worked on a plan for renewable energy, solar panels, wind turbines, and water collection systems that could make Anya more self-sufficient. But even as they made progress, the challenges mounted. The cooperative's success was attracting attention, both positive and negative. Some outside businesses saw the potential in Anya's model and wanted to invest, but their interests were not always aligned with the cooperative's values. Others tried to undermine the cooperative's efforts, spreading rumors and sowing distrust among the villagers. Yet, despite these challenges, Kwesi and his team pushed forward, driven by the belief that they were doing something important. They faced setbacks, but with every obstacle came new lessons and opportunities for growth. Slowly but surely, the dream of a thriving Anya began to take shape, and the hope for a brighter future began to burn brighter than ever before. In the years that followed, Anya slowly transformed. The cooperative grew, expanding its reach and influence both within the village and beyond. New businesses opened, young people found meaningful work, and the community flourished. The fields were lush with crops, the market was bustling with activity, and the cooperative had become a source of pride for the people of Anya. Kwesi's vision had become a reality, and as he stood in the village square, watching the life of the community unfold before him, he knew that the journey had been worth it. The path had been long, and the road had been tough, but Anya was no longer just a village struggling to survive. It was a community that had found its strength, its voice, and its future. The cooperative's success had not only transformed Anya, it had also become a model for other villages and communities across Africa, showing that sustainable development, community empowerment, and unity were the keys to building a better future. The dream that had started with one young man and his small group of friends had now become a movement, and its impact would continue to grow for generations to come. Kwesi looked out over the village, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. It was just the beginning. The news of Kwesi's strange farming experiments spread like wildfire through Anya. In a community where traditions were passed down through generations, change was often met with suspicion. And so, it was no surprise when Kwesi became the subject of whispers and laughter. "What is he doing with those bamboo pipes?" an elderly farmer scoffed one morning. "Does he think water flows uphill?" "He's wasting his time," chimed in another. "Our fathers and their fathers before them tilled the soil the same way. Why should we do any different?" Kwesi pretended not to hear the remarks as he worked under the blazing sun. He had constructed channels from the stream to his field, meticulously guiding water to the crops. It was backbreaking labor, but Kwesi's determination was unshakable. One afternoon, as Kwesi adjusted the bamboo pipes, a group of children gathered nearby, giggling. Leading them was Kwaku, the village troublemaker, who had taken a keen interest in mocking Kwesi. "Look at the great engineer!" Kwaku shouted. When will your magic water make you rich? The children laughed, and even some passing adults shook their heads with pity. Kwesi felt a surge of anger, but swallowed it. He knew arguing would only fuel their ridicule. That evening, Kwesi confided in Mama Efua. "Why can't they see I'm trying to help?" he asked, his voice heavy with frustration. Mama Efua placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Change frightens people, Kwesi. But remember, even the baobab tree starts as a fragile sapling. Keep nurturing your dream, and one day, they will see its fruits." Her words gave Kwesi the strength to continue. He doubled down on his efforts, working tirelessly from sunrise to sunset. Gradually, his crops began to thrive. The cassava leaves were greener, the stems sturdier, and the soil richer than ever before. Though the villagers still mocked him, Kwesi held on to his vision, knowing that the seeds he planted would soon yield more than just crops, they would yield respect and hope. The morning dew clung to the cassava leaves, shimmering like diamonds in the rising sun. Kwesi stood at the edge of his field, wiping sweat from his brow as he surveyed the crops. The results of his hard work were finally visible. The plants stood taller and healthier than ever before, their vibrant green leaves swaying gently in the breeze. Harvest day had arrived. Kwesi had spent weeks preparing for this moment. With a makeshift wheelbarrow built from old wood and metal scraps, he began the laborious task of uprooting the cassava. The roots were thick and plentiful, far surpassing the yields he had achieved in previous seasons. As he worked, the sound of laughter and chatter drifted from the village. Though many of the villagers had mocked him, a few curious onlookers had started to notice the unusual success of his crops. By mid-morning, a small group had gathered near his field. "Kwesi, what kind of magic is this?" asked Ya, an elderly woman who often sold cassava at the market. She leaned on her walking stick, her eyes wide with astonishment. "I have never seen cassava this big in all my years." Kwesi straightened up, brushing dirt off his hands. "It's not magic, Auntie Ya. It's the new methods I've been using: irrigation, composting, and spacing the plants properly. Mr. Otang taught me about it." The villagers murmured among themselves. Some nodded thoughtfully, while others crossed their arms skeptically. "It looks good," Kwaku said, his usual smirk replaced with a grudging tone of admiration. "But let's see if it tastes good too." The group erupted in laughter, but Kwesi smiled. "You'll have your chance to find out soon," he replied confidently. By the end of the day, Kwesi had harvested enough cassava to fill several baskets. He loaded them onto a cart borrowed from Madame Abina, who had agreed to buy his produce at the market. Before setting out, however, Kwesi decided to share his success with the village. He invited everyone to a small gathering under the baobab tree, where he roasted cassava over a fire pit and served it with freshly ground pepper sauce. The aroma alone was enough to draw a crowd. "This is delicious," exclaimed Kwaku, his mouth full. "I take back what I said, Kwesi. You've done something special here." Kwesi chuckled. "Thank you, Kwaku. But this is just the beginning. Imagine what we could achieve if the whole village adopted these methods." The crowd murmured in agreement. For the first time, Kwesi felt the warmth of acceptance from those who had doubted him. Early the next morning, Kwesi set off for the market in Madame Abina's cart. The journey to the neighboring town was long and bumpy, but Kwesi's heart was light. He couldn't wait to see how his produce would be received. The market was bustling with activity, a kaleidoscope of colors, sounds, and smells. Traders called out to customers, children darted between stalls, and the air buzzed with energy. Kwesi unloaded his baskets at Madame Abina's stall, arranging the cassava carefully. "Kwesi, this is incredible," Madame Abina said, inspecting the produce. "These roots are larger and healthier than anything I've seen in a long time. They'll sell out in no time." True to her word, customers flocked to the stall. Word spread quickly about the special cassava from Anya village, and by midday, every basket was empty. Kwesi's earnings exceeded his expectations, and he felt a surge of pride and gratitude. Before leaving the market, Madame Abina pulled him aside. "Kwesi, you have a gift," she said. If you can keep this up, we could work together to expand your operations. I can help you reach more markets. Kwesi nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. Thank you, Madam Abina. I'll do everything I can to grow. When Kwesi returned to the village, he was greeted by a small crowd. News of his success at the market had already reached home, and the villagers were eager to hear his story. Kwesi, tell us how you did it, someone called out. Kwesi stood before the crowd, his voice steady and confident. It wasn't easy, he began. I had to work hard and learn new things, even when some people laughed at me. But I believed in what I was doing. If we work together, we can all achieve this kind of success. His words resonated deeply, especially with the younger villagers who had grown weary of the struggles their parents faced. A few even approached Kwesi privately, asking if he would teach them his methods. That night, as Kwesi sat with Mama Efua under the stars, he felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. His grandmother smiled, her eyes glistening with pride. You've done well, my son, she said. But remember, the journey is just beginning. The tallest tree must withstand the strongest winds. Kwesi nodded, her words echoing in his heart. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them. For the first time, he felt not just hope, but a sense of purpose, a mission to uplift his village and leave a lasting legacy. The sun was setting over Anya, casting long shadows across the village as the warm golden light filtered through the dense trees. Kwesi stood at the edge of his newly expanded field, contemplating the future. His crops had flourished, and the village was beginning to take notice. Yet, deep in his heart, he knew that true success wasn't just about individual achievement, it was about creating lasting change for the entire community. It was time to build something bigger. Kwesi gathered the elders of Anya at the village square under the shade of the baobab tree. The gathering was informal, yet the elders' presence filled the air with a sense of gravitas. Mama Efua, as always, sat at his side, her weathered hands folded in her lap. Kwesi had grown up listening to the stories and wisdom of the village elders, and today, he needed their approval and their partnership. My elders, Kwesi began, his voice firm but respectful, I stand before you not as an individual, but as a part of this community. Over the past few months, I've seen the power of new farming techniques and hard work. But there is something missing, unity. If we come together, pooling our knowledge, labor, and resources, I believe we can change the future of Anya forever. The elders exchanged curious glances. Kwesi could feel their skepticism, their hesitation. Anya had always been a village of tradition, where things had been done a certain way for generations. Change was not something they accepted easily. I understand your doubts, Kwesi continued, sensing the hesitation. But let me share with you what I've seen in the outside world. In other villages, in towns, even in the city, there are cooperatives, groups of farmers working together, sharing knowledge and resources to increase production, to reduce costs, and to help each other. Why should Anya be any different? One elder, Obairi, cleared his throat and addressed Kwesi with a voice as deep as the river. Kwesi, we've seen your success, but you must understand, my son, that we have lived by the old ways for generations. The earth does not change easily. You speak of cooperation, of sharing, but the history of Anya is one of individual effort, of each family working for itself. Kwesi nodded respectfully but pressed on. I understand, Obairi. But look at the land we have. We are blessed with fertile soil, water from the river, and a community with untapped potential. What if we pooled our resources and worked together? We could buy better tools, invest in irrigation systems, and even build a central storage facility for our crops so that we aren't at the mercy of the market fluctuations. Obairi looked thoughtfully at Kwesi, his wrinkled face showing no emotion, but his eyes, deep and wise, betrayed a flicker of interest. Kwesi continued, outlining his vision. We could form a cooperative, where each family contributes what they can, and in turn, we share the profits. We'll support each other through difficult seasons, and together, we'll be able to negotiate better prices for our crops. And the best part, we'll grow as one. There was a long silence. The wind rustled the leaves of the baobab tree, and for a moment, the only sound was the distant murmur of the river. Then, slowly, the eldest among them, Nana Afia, spoke. She was a sharp woman with a keen mind, though her age had made her physically frail. "Kwesi, your words are persuasive," Nana Afia said. "But the question is not whether we should work together, but how. Many have tried to organize this village before, only for things to fall apart due to mistrust, greed, or old grudges. How do you plan to keep this dream alive?" Kwesi's heart raced. He had anticipated this question. "It will start with trust, Nana Afia. We must lead by example. Each family will contribute to the cooperative in a way that suits them, some with land, others with labor or knowledge. We will have transparent meetings, where everyone's voice is heard. And above all, there will be no room for greed. If we are to succeed, we must be united in purpose." Another elder, Kwame, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "And who will lead this cooperative? Who will be the one to organize everything?" Kwesi took a deep breath. He knew this was coming. "I am willing to lead, with the guidance of the elders. But I will not do it alone. Together, we will decide what's best for our community." There was a pause as the elders considered his proposal. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Obiri spoke. "Kwesi," he said, his voice softening, "your vision is bold. And we see the changes you brought about. We will give you our support. But you must prove, with actions, not just words, that this cooperative will bring more than just profits. It must bring peace, prosperity, and unity." Kwesi nodded, a surge of gratitude filling his chest. "I promise you, Obiri, we will succeed. We will be stronger as one." The following weeks were filled with organizing, meetings, and planning. Kwesi worked tirelessly to explain the concept of the cooperative to every household in Anya. Slowly but surely, he earned the trust of the villagers. Some were hesitant, but most were willing to give it a chance, seeing the potential for a better future. The first major hurdle was the issue of resources. Many villagers didn't have enough capital to invest in tools or fertilizers. But Kwesi, with the help of Madame Abina, negotiated a deal with a local supplier to provide credit to the cooperative, allowing them to purchase necessary equipment without immediate payment. Soon, the village began to transform. Families started working together, sharing labor, tools, and knowledge. Kwesi organized workshops on new farming methods, ensuring that everyone was involved and learning. The cooperative began to take shape, not just in the physical sense, but also in the hearts and minds of the villagers. As the harvest season approached, the first signs of success were evident. The cooperative's crops were thriving, and Kwesi felt a sense of pride swelling within him. The work had been hard, but the results were showing. With better irrigation, crop rotation, and shared resources, Anya's farms had never been more productive. With the harvest ready, the cooperative now faced its next challenge: where to sell the crops. Madame Abina had helped them establish connections with nearby towns, but the competition from larger, more established traders was fierce. Kwesi knew that in order to succeed, they had to stand out. He proposed that the cooperative build a central market in Anya, where not only their produce, but also handmade goods, crafts, and even local food could be sold. This idea was met with both excitement and concern. Some villagers feared it might be too ambitious, while others saw the potential for greater income and exposure. As the weeks went by, the village rallied together to build the market, a structure made from local materials, but strong enough to withstand the weather. Kwesi led the efforts, ensuring that each villager had a role to play. When the new market was completed, it became a symbol of Anya's transformation. Traders and buyers from neighboring villages visited regularly, and the cooperative's products, once humble, were now highly sought after. Kwesi's vision had come to fruition. But this success wasn't just about economic gain. The cooperative had brought the village closer together. Old rivalries faded, and a sense of pride in their shared success filled the air. Anya was no longer just a remote village struggling to survive, it had become a thriving community with a vision for the future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Kwesi sat at the edge of the newly constructed market in Anya, watching the evening bustle unfold. The cooperative was thriving, and the village had never looked more united. Yet, Kwesi knew that success was not guaranteed, there was still much to be done. And as much as he trusted the villagers, there were challenges that required expertise beyond what the community could offer. It was time to take the next step. Kwesi had always admired Madame Abina from a distance. A successful businesswoman and landowner, she had built a small empire of her own. While her influence and wealth were a source of envy for many, Kwesi saw beyond her reputation. He saw a woman with a sharp mind and a willingness to embrace new ideas. Her support had been crucial in the cooperative's early days, but Kwesi had a feeling that her role in Anya's future was far from over. The opportunity for a formal partnership came unexpectedly one afternoon when Kwesi was visiting Madame Abina at her estate. He had arrived with plans to discuss the new challenges the cooperative was facing, particularly with expanding production and reaching new markets. After all, the crops from the cooperative were doing well, but they needed a way to scale up, something Madame Abina could help with. Madame Abina's estate was a far cry from the humble dwellings of Anya. Her land was vast, with fields stretching beyond the horizon, filled with crops of various kinds. When Kwesi arrived, he was escorted to the main house, a sprawling structure built from stone and wood, designed for both comfort and business. "Kwesi, welcome." Madame Abina greeted him warmly, her sharp eyes assessing him as she led him into her sitting room. The space was elegant, filled with hand-woven carpets, rich fabrics, and shelves stocked with books. As they sat, she offered him a cup of local honeyed tea, a traditional gesture that always made Kwesi feel at home. "Thank you, Madame Abina," he replied, accepting the tea. "I've come to discuss the future of the cooperative. We've made good progress, but I feel that we need to push further, expand our operations, reach new markets. And, quite frankly, I need help." Madame Abina smiled, her eyes gleaming with understanding. "I knew this day would come, Kwesi. You've already proven your capabilities. But to reach your goals, you need more than just hard work and determination. You need resources, access to capital, and a network." Kwesi nodded. He had thought long and hard about this moment. "I want to ask for your help. Not just as a partner, but as a mentor. I know I can learn a lot from you, about business, about management, about expanding beyond the local market. And in return, the cooperative will offer you a stake in its success. Together, we can create something bigger than either of us could do alone." Madame Abina leaned back in her chair, considering Kwesi's words. She had watched him grow from a young dreamer into a man who commanded respect, both in the village and beyond. But entering a formal partnership with him was a significant step. She was known for making shrewd business decisions, and she had no intentions of risking her hard-earned wealth on a venture that wasn't guaranteed to succeed. "Tell me," she began, "why should I take this risk? The cooperative is still new, and I've seen many ventures like this fail before. What makes you so certain this will work?" Kwesi set down his teacup and looked her directly in the eyes. "Because this is not just about profit for me, it's about creating lasting change. Anya is a community that has long been held back by tradition. But the world is changing, and we can either evolve with it or be left behind. I believe we have the potential to build something that will benefit not only us, but future generations. With your help, we can scale up production, expand to new markets, and create sustainable systems that will ensure the village's prosperity for years to come." Madame Abina was silent for a moment, and Kwesi could feel the weight of her decision. He knew that this partnership could shape the future of Anya, but it would require trust that Madame Abina would need to see before committing. "You speak with passion, Kwesi," she finally said, her voice measured. "And I believe you have the determination to make this work. But I will not jump in without a plan. I want to see how we can structure this partnership, how the profits will be divided, how we will handle expansion, and how you plan to scale without compromising the integrity of the cooperative." Kwesi smiled, relieved to see that Madame Abina was on board. "I've already thought about that," he said. "I propose a 60-40 split, 60% for the cooperative, 40% for you. In exchange, you'll provide the capital for expanding production, help secure access to markets, and assist in building a distribution network. You'll also guide me on business management. I'll handle the day-to-day operations and ensure that the cooperative remains focused on its mission of fairness and unity." Madame Abina raised an eyebrow. 60-40? That's generous of you. It's what I believe is fair, Kwesi responded. You'll be helping to scale the operation, and your expertise will be invaluable. This is a long-term partnership, Madame Abina. One that will change the future of Anya, and beyond. The room was quiet for a few moments as Madame Abina processed his proposal. Then, slowly, she stood and extended her hand. "I'm in," she said, her voice resolute. "Let's make Anya the shining example of what happens when tradition meets innovation." With the partnership formalized, the cooperative's next phase of growth began in earnest. Madame Abina wasted no time in helping Kwesi implement the changes that would allow the cooperative to reach new heights. She arranged meetings with suppliers from neighboring regions, securing bulk discounts on fertilizers, seeds, and farming tools. Together, Kwesi and Madame Abina worked on improving the cooperative's infrastructure, building better storage facilities to prevent spoilage, installing irrigation systems that could be shared by multiple farms, and organizing regular training sessions to teach farmers about new techniques. But it wasn't just about the physical resources. Madame Abina helped Kwesi learn the ropes of financial management. She taught him about bookkeeping, marketing, and negotiating with large-scale buyers. Under her tutelage, Kwesi's leadership skills grew exponentially. He learned how to balance the needs of the community with the realities of running a business. And he understood, more than ever, the delicate art of negotiation, ensuring that everyone in the cooperative benefited while also keeping the business financially sound. As the weeks went by, the cooperative's reach expanded. Anya's produce was now being sold in several nearby towns, and even larger markets further afield began to show interest. The profits were flowing, but the true reward came in seeing the villagers, once hesitant and skeptical, embracing the new way of life. They were no longer just farmers working in isolation, they were part of a larger, thriving business that was changing the village's economic landscape. As Kwesi and Madame Abina sat together one evening, overlooking the fields that stretched before them, the enormity of their accomplishments hit home. The cooperative had grown beyond their wildest expectations, and Anya had transformed from a struggling village into a beacon of hope in the region. Kwesi turned to Madame Abina, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I could not have done this without you." Madame Abina smiled, her eyes gleaming with pride. "You did this, Kwesi. You had the vision, the courage, and the will to make it happen. I only gave you the tools." Kwesi nodded, knowing that their work was far from over. There were still many challenges ahead, new competitors, political obstacles, and the inevitable setbacks that came with growth. But he also knew that with Madame Abina by his side, and with the strength of the cooperative behind him, there was no limit to what they could achieve. Together, they had built a future for Anya, a future rooted in unity, innovation, and hard work.